In the idyllic town of Vaxholm, I've been able to catch up with one of Julian Assange's key legal advisors.
Sweden is a beautiful country and an interesting place to be.
For 2 years, 31-year-old Jennifer Robinson has been working pro bono for her client. But with Sweden determined to extradite Assange, it's the last place you'd expect to find her.
I think it's a great shame that this case has caused such controversy globally and has been handled the way it's been handled, because I think it's done Sweden a lot of damage.
What is the difference in your mind between human rights and the work advocacy for human rights and activism?
Well, advocacy is a form of activism, I guess.
And this is what has drawn Robinson here, a festival of ideas, bringing together free speech activists, artists and computer geeks. The sort of gathering that would probably appeal to Assange himself, were he not holed up in the Ecuadorian embassy in London, unable to leave.
And that's what's so important, I think, about what Wikileaks does, because you need the relevant information in order to be able to act.
Robinson is keen to preach the Wikileaks gospel, but the issue of rape claims against Assange won't go away.
My criticism of where Assange's message has been going recently from a UK perspective is that whilst the awareness is high, it suggests that popular support is going the wrong direction. And because his communication about transparency is getting caught up in a completely different communication about a rape accusation, and he's using the rape accusation to try and communicate his transparency message, and I think that's a mistake, and that's why I think popular opinion is shifting against him.
And the media isn't always the best source, the mass media.
Assange's legal team knows that public opinion is vital for his case, so they're at pains to point out he's not running away from the rape allegations.
He remains willing to cooperate with the Swedish case. The reason he sought asylum when he did was because the Swedish prosecutor had announced through a press release that she would be placing him into custody, and he would not have the bail conditions that he had complied with in the United Kingdom here in Sweden. That meant that he physically did not have the opportunity, once in Sweden, to seek asylum with respect to the United States' plans to prosecute and extradite him.
But he was afraid that the American authorities are going to chase you down and go after you.
Oh well, they've been trying to do it for a while.
Watch it, he said.
Since he emerged as the world's #1 whistleblower, controversy has been Julian Assange's constant companion. And from a life on the move to virtual prisoner in London, he's always stayed one step ahead of his pursuers.
They routinely charge and try to frame and fit up whistleblowers, and that is what is happening to Julian Assange.
His bolt for the Ecuadorian embassy caught everyone by surprise, including his lawyer.
I found out that he was in the embassy when I got a phone call from a journalist in Spain, because it actually came out on the Spanish wires before it was available in English.
Hands up, Ecuador! Hands up, Ecuador! Hands up, Ecuador!
Tensions ran high when Britain indicated it may take the extraordinary step of withdrawing the diplomatic status of the building in order to seize Assange.
Withdrawing Ecuador's diplomatic status in these circumstances, and indeed in almost any circumstances, sets a dangerous precedent around the world for diplomatic missions elsewhere, both for British diplomats and for all diplomats. And yet you now have a huge amount of police resources outside the embassy in a case in which a man has not even been charged yet. I think a lot of people ask a lot of questions about why.
Assange emerged to thank his supporters and the President of Ecuador, creating yet more controversy.
I thank President Correa for the courage he has shown in considering and in granting me political asylum.
A lot of people find it a little bit hypocritical that Ecuador has granted Julian Assange asylum while it has this record of harassing journalists in its own country. What do you make of that?
I actually think the more interesting question that people haven't been asking is what it says about the democracies and the free speech protections in the West, that a journalist and a publisher has sought asylum in Ecuador because he didn't feel that his rights were adequately protected. That is a more interesting question.
It is still valid that Ecuador is not exactly a protector of freedom of speech in its own country, but is giving Julian Assange, the founder of Wikileaks, protection.
The same thing could be said of many states. Australia locks up its refugees while purporting to have an excellent human rights reputation.
And the world was watching because you were watching.
So why Ecuador? Assange's lawyers explicitly link his asylum to their view that Canberra has failed to act on his behalf.
And the Australian government has, despite repeated requests, both in writing and in person when I've met with Australian government officials, to seek the assurances that Ecuador later sought before granting asylum status. And the Australian government has so far not done or acceded to any of those requests. So Australia was, for Julian, not an option.
For its part, Canberra maintains that Assange has not been abandoned.
There's been no Australian who's received more consular support in a comparable period than Mr Assange.
As both sides continue to snipe at each other, what are Assange's lawyers actually asking for?
The Australian government has been requested to make representations to the United States about their ongoing criminal investigation and to seek an assurance that they would not prosecute for what is essentially journalistic activity. The Australian government conceded in a meeting with me through the Attorney General that it is possible to seek that assurance. They can seek that assurance, but they are specifically deciding not to.
So now the request is put directly to the White House.
I ask President Obama to do the right thing. The United States must renounce its witch hunt against Wikileaks. The United States must pledge before the world that it will not pursue journalists for shining a light on the secret crimes of the powerful.
Assange's plea comes as Australia seeks to play down suggestions that Sweden would ever extradite Assange to the US.
Sweden, a liberal democracy, is not part of some fully blown CIA conspiracy. I repeat, the Americans could extradite Mr Assange more easily from the United Kingdom than they can from Sweden.
I certainly have never suggested that there is any such fully blown CIA conspiracy. The Bobb Carr in particular, and the Australian government more generally, has been willfully blind, in my view, to what has been happening in the US and what is an ongoing criminal investigation. We're talking about 45,000 pages of FBI investigations. We're talking about an active ongoing criminal investigation by the Department of Justice into Julian Assange and Wikileaks. And all of the indications suggest that they are planning to prosecute him and may even have an indictment already prepared.
The Americans have said nothing to indicate an indictment is planned.
The US may have said nothing, but as the controversy continues, Australia's embassy in Washington has been busy asking questions. This article reveals cables obtained under Freedom of Information, where Ambassador Kim Beazley seeks high-level advice on the direction and likely outcome of the investigation, and reiterated our request for early advice of any decision to indict or seek extradition of Mr Assange.
There is a criminal investigation of unprecedented size and scale. That the Australian government is saying publicly, we have no information about plans to prosecute him and we don't think that the US is interested, runs completely counter to the briefings they're getting from their own diplomats.
But how likely is it that Assange would ever be extradited from Sweden to the US? That question was taken up by this panel at the Festival of Ideas.
And the particular circumstances in which he finds himself is that it is unlikely the US would seek his extradition from the UK while there is a valid warrant from another country. Yeah. So the factual situation in which he finds himself means that if he's going to be extradited to the US, it's going to happen from here after the matters are resolved here. And then the question is it possible to be extradited from Sweden to the US? And absolutely it's possible.
But it all depends on a number of things. First of all, he could not be extradited and subjected to capital punishment. That's very clear. And I think that the US would not even even consider that. So the death penalty is out of the question. Secondly, it would have to be a crime that is punishable both under US law and Swedish/UK law. But then there's a second hurdle, namely that it could not be for political crime. And espionage and some other related crimes are considered to be political crimes, that it could not be military crime.
But it seems pretty straightforward. He's not going to get extradited from Sweden. I mean, Parliament just clarified that for two extremely robust reasons, he cannot be extradited, not even including the death penalty.
I'm actually not sure that's what he said. In fact, it depends entirely on the way in which the US pleads their extradition request. In fact, what I understand you to have said is that it is entirely possible, even for a very serious offence that might attract the death penalty, provided it's not political.
Yeah.
You could be extradited from Sweden to the US.
Yeah. If the US would frame it as an ordinary crime, I don't know, computer crime or something like that has been mentioned, it could still be considered a political crime if there's a strong political element to the crime.
But how could anyone consider any of this not to be highly political at this point? I mean, it's all about politics.
So that's the public perception, is it's a political...
Absolutely.
I don't think anyone's going to come out of this well.
Okay.
And I think that's very unfortunate. It didn't need to go there.
Including Julian.
Unfortunately for Julian, this case has been incredibly damaging to his reputation, and it hasn't been handled. I don't believe it's been handled by the Swedish authorities in a way that it could have been, which could have been resolved a long time ago. Okay. And this is really detracting from what, as you said, what WikiLeaks has done.
Sleepy Vaxholm seems a world away from the international controversy that's embroiling London, Washington and Canberra. But even here, Jennifer Robinson is determined to fight for a principle and a friend.
Irrespective of what your views are about Julian as a person, however uninformed, irrespective of what you think about WikiLeaks, whether you think it's a good thing or a bad thing, he is Australian, he's an Australian citizen, and imagine if he were your brother, or your son, or your friend. How would you feel about one of your friends being treated that way by the Australian government? And I think all Australians ought to think about it that way.